Hi, welcome to the Future of Work. This is episode two with a spotlight on early years in childcare. My name is Gavin O'Mara. I'm the CEO and founder of FE News. This is a total collaboration co-produced with NCFE and FE News. And I've got a really exciting episode for you today. I've got a co-host who is Janet King from NCFE. Janet, do you want to join us in the studio? Hey, Janet, how are you?
Hi, hello, Gavin. Yeah, good, thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, really pleased for you to join us. So Janet is the sector manager for education and childcare at NCFE, and we're looking all around early years in childcare. And we was having a chat because there's a green room before you sort of join. We had a little bit of a chat in the green room. There's a lot happened in early years in childcare. We've got two really cool guests. We've got Gary and Jill. And I sort of Gary early before everyone sort of joins. It's a bit early. And we joined talking about there's a lot for our little ones where we've got to be obviously safe as we can with what's been happening with the pandemic, but also be very conscious of their learning and development needs and masks and sort of being conscious around being caring and stuff. So I mean, what are the
Absolutely.
main challenges at the moment, would you say, Janet, around the childcare sector at the moment? How does this sort of impact the current workforce? The pandemic, there's like the big,
Mm.
the great reshuffle or the great resignation or whatever you want to call it, massive developments in technology. But we're talking about, young people here. What have been like the biggest challenges that you've seen?
Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to start with a bit of a positive spin. I'm going to actually start by saying the early years workforce are so passionate, they're so motivated, they're so driven that actually the the interaction that they're having with children and families has made and continues to make a massive positive difference. So that's the first thing to say, is that passion has not dwindled. That motivation and drive has not gone away. But you're absolutely right, Gavin. Massive challenges within the sector. Some are those challenges that have sort of resonated and that they've just continued. They've been there sort of pre-pandemic. Remember such a time, and they continue perhaps to be exasperated by it. So I would say for the workforce, we're really thinking about those challenges around recruitment, around retention, um, but again, that drive to make sure that that's in place comes from the passion, and that's driven. But there are those challenges, and the challenges around funding and implications of that may be unique, for individual settings, and maybe perhaps increased for different nurseries in different regions, or all of that. There's lots of factors that go along with that. But I know most early years settings will say that they've been impacted in some way with recruitment and retention. And of course, staff that have been victims of COVID themselves. And so you're working on a very skeleton staff, and the sort of the quality is that's paramount. That's within the core. That comes from the heart. That is not questionable. But to maintain that quality is a challenge when you've not got the staff that you need. Absolutely. So that's been a massive challenge. And then if we take it to the other angle, and the challenges that families have faced, and of course, the key people that are working within these early years settings, that are educating our young children, they've worked so hard to make sure that families feel secure, that families feel safe, that they can bring their children back into the environment, and that it's right to do so and safe to do so. So that's been, a challenge, but also something that's been part and parcel of what educators do. So the mental health of children is obviously something that's on everybody's radar. When children have been out of that socialization, you have transitions all over again, and you're thinking about how that's going to impact and affect. But the one core thing, Gavin, has been the quality. I think those early years educators, yes, there's challenges, but they've continued to put that hard work in, and that commitment to make sure that other people are feeling safe, that the children, the babies, the children and their families.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but
rambled on a bit there, didn't I?
no, not at all. And I think it's just to sort of take into account really with staff absences due to the pandemic and stuff. Kids little ones don't have that sort of they don't understand that you can't lick your hand, like, sort of touch stuff and all this sort of stuff. It's just a natural part of development, isn't it? And like, but for at the same
Absolutely.
time, having to have, like, working, you've probably got family at home as well, think, oh my life, I've just got just got kids touching me and licking their hands around. That's going to be difficult, and there's people have been, like, we didn't clap like childcare workers, but we should have done, and I just think there's just so much in there that is really, really important. What was interesting about time of the pandemic and everything going on, T levels. So I wanted to ask you, NCFS, wanted to ask you, how do you sort of see education and childcare T levels can have an effect on future early years and childcare workforce? Because it was interesting timing, with the pandemic, with all of this going on. Then you're looking at new quals, and what does that sort of mean for impacts? What are your sort of views on that?
Okay, well, the feedback that we've had from the pilot providers and from the providers that have started to deliver the T-level in September 21 has been amazingly positive. It is being well received by students. We have such comments, such really good positive comments from the staff who are delivering it, and also from the workforce who are receiving these students, and they're going to be coming out into the workforce from sort of summer 2022, from this year. So I think the timing, I mean, it's unfortunate that we've done a pilot through a pandemic. What can you do about that? And so that's going to have some sort of impact on the way that assessment has been done, obviously across all of the assessment profiles with any external assessment. However, the news is good, and I think the T-level has given an opportunity to actually look at the criteria, to refresh it. This is a sector that deserves professionalisation within the public perception, and the T-level is leading the way for that. It's not an elite qualification, but it's an elite sector that they're going to work in, and I think it's very important that that training is as good as it possibly can be, and the T-level is allowing for that. Now, there are many different the routes. There are the apprenticeship route, we've got the T-level route, and so on, and they've all got a place, they've all got a purpose, because it just depends on what that student needs. We've got to be student centred, but the T-level is allowing for that sort of hybrid in a very good way. So you've got your sort of your A-level achievement in terms of theoretical conceptual knowledge, and you've got that application because you're looking at, if it's in the early years, you're looking at the early years educator criteria. If we're thinking about assisting teaching, then you're looking at spending some time within schools. And if you're looking at mentoring, then you're looking at the role of a mentor in educational settings. So what it does is actually give a really good breadth of knowledge and understanding of children from 0 to 19. So children and young people, what do I need to know? And then you've got that deeper dive in the occupational specialisms. So this is a qualification that will help to professionalise the sector, and that can only be a good thing. But the feedback's been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Should we bring in a guest? So we've got Gary and Jill. So it's Gary Simpson from LEAF, so London Early Years Foundation. I had to make sure I was getting that right, Gary, because I know I mentioned it earlier. And Jill Mason from Kids Planet Training Academy. Gary, Jill, do you want to come and join us in the studio? Hey, Gary. Hey, Jill, how are you?
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. So I wanted to kick off. So what do you see the biggest skills gaps to be in the current workforce? And do you see these gaps growing over the next year? Gary, did you want to kick off?
I can only reinforce what Janet said with regards to the conundrums of recruitment, and the fact that over the past, goodness knows how many years, we've seen a dip in the amount of people that are choosing early years as a career and joining the workforce. And that's had an impact. It has an impact on recruitment in individual nurseries, and also on the impact of the children themselves, for having wonderful, amazing people come into their environments and actually enjoy spending time working with them. So for us, the challenges are encouraging more people to see early years as a career option. And as Jill said, with regards to T-levels and other opportunities, seeing pathways to build on your career in early years and see those opportunities in early years to really make a difference in society for our youngest children.
Jill, did you want to add anything to that at all?
Yeah, and then not to sound like a broken record again, but Gary and Janet are absolutely right. Recruitment is key, and we haven't got the staff there, and we've got skills gaps in our nurseries. So recruitment, and interestingly, through the Janet and yourself mentioned the pandemic before. For a while, the status of the early years was raised as key workers, and the impact of that was actually quite profound. So people actually sort of realised the difficult and integral job that early years, practitioners achieved, and we had a lot of interest from people who were thinking about changing careers and things. So it's really about then, highlighting the different roles and a really big push from the top, really, about a recruitment campaign around that. And I'd also just mention really about the a lot of people feedback around child development. There's real skills gap around there as well, and we need to sort of plug that with some sort of really good CPD. But again, we need that recruitment drive first and foremost.
Yeah, no, definitely. Janet, we were talking about a couple of things, and you was particularly, I know you had a couple of questions for Jill, because you know them well.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you wanted to sort of hand over to you for this next bit, because
Yeah, sure.
particularly around sort of continuing professional development and such, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm interested in sort of your perceptions, Jill and Gary, in terms of what those skills gaps are, and how education and continuing professional development can make a big difference there. And I just want to share a little bit about what we're doing at NCFE and see what you think. It's a bit of a risk-taking sort of thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we're looking at sort of induction booklets. We're looking at mentoring, supervision, things that are free for the workforce to actually, to use. And I'm thinking those newly qualified students that are coming on board now, that have had some experience, they've met the EYE criteria, but through maybe that risk-rated approach where they've not had the same amount of time. So if they've not been doing this as part of an apprenticeship, they're doing it as a T-level, or they're doing it as another vocational technical qualification. They've had limited time in their placement. So do you think something like induction would help to take some pressure off, where the workforce, have got something that's documented? And also we've got the CPD, where we look at CPD carousels, we've got careers toolkit, and we've also got a child development unit that stands alone as well. So do you think those sorts of things would help to help with, with the gaps? We've not got a magic one with the careers and the retention, but these sorts of things help, I think. What do you think?
I'd say anything that helps to support keeping things going in nurseries with opportunities that make things easier is always going to be a win. Nurseries are busy places and they're dynamic. We have ratio-bound staff and children. There's lots of complexities that we have to kind of organise and manage. And I'd absolutely agree that induction is an incredibly important thing when you're going into a new place. If you're brand new, you don't know where to hang your coat, let alone what's expected of you. So anything that kind of embeds and helps people to understand and makes connections to why we're here is always going to be useful, because we want to induct people into that idea of working with the children and being around and supporting the children's development. And that's a big expectation. So how do we support people to build their confidence and their skills along their journey when they first start with us as an employee, so that we can nurture that and hopefully keep them with us and build on that lovely core of nice people in the nurseries who are doing fantastic things with children. Yeah,
absolutely, because that's the danger, isn't it? That they will, they will get their qualification, they'll come, they'll do some work, and then they may sort of move on. It's about that nurturing, isn't it, and being able to keep that individual.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to get it right from the start, as Gary mentioned then as well, coming into a busy environment, and we need to take stock of that and take time to reflect. And the induction side of things is of paramount importance, and Ofsted always zoom in on that, so how is your induction? How we can't be setting people up to fail. We need to get it right from the very start. I also like your idea of a carousel of, CPD opportunities, because as new roles are emerging, as new roles are coming on board and higher profile through the pandemic, like the Senko role, the Panko role, and all of those new roles, they need support and with valid, recognised qualifications to build those careers and to support retention. Because if we're, developing our teams and they're seeing the opportunities and how they can progress, then all of those with a bona fide qualification make it really, really, relevant and it really helps retention.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it builds that if we could have that induction, that maybe supervision that becomes more structured, in early years and things like that, like it is in other centres and all in other sectors. And also the idea of maybe, having some appreciation of a newly qualified, you got your NQT for teachers, but, early years educators, early years practitioners, they're expected to hit the ground running, and there's no appreciation of that always, especially, and I'm generalizing, but, in very busy work settings, this can be difficult. So, yeah, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well that, I'm a parent. I've had kids in childcare settings. You're juggling a number of things. Like you mentioned Ofsted, you're juggling parents' expectations that their kid's going to do whatever or just be safe. And it's just like, there's a lot of things to sort of to cover there. And I think it's interesting, Jill, that you're talking around like progression routes for people as well, around retention, because it's one thing recruiting and developing, but like you're saying, Janet, it's retaining, isn't it? Is the most important. And that's CPD and sort of, bringing someone in for the whole sort of, for a period of time to help them progress in their career, isn't it? If you know what I mean. I think that's really interesting what you guys are looking at there. Can I ask, what do you sort of see the future of, this is around future of work is this whole season. So what do you see the future of work to look like in early years and the childcare sector? And what type of, you touched on it a bit there, Jill, really, what type of roles do you see more and more sort of changing and developing in the sector in the coming years? Jill, did you want to kick off? Because you mentioned a bunch of different roles there in the first place.
Yeah, sure. And so obviously, those roles, are becoming more and more increasingly important, really, in the sector. And looking at those, the early years, and some of us have been involved for a very long time in early years, and we've seen the growth. And I mean, we hear comments like, oh gosh, we're more like social workers sometimes, and all those additional skills and linking with families and working with parents, and there's a wealth of qualifications out there that we should be sort of like funding and developing our practitioners to have those additional skills. And obviously, post-pandemic, we've had a real focus on children not being able to play. So play work disappeared, and play work's coming back on board again, which is only a good thing. It never went away, but actually, it's really important that our children are outdoors, are playing, and reclaiming play really for our children, really pushing that whole agenda. And also, gaining some parity with some higher level qualifications as well. So our early years teacher trainers, our EYITTs, is having the parity that they would have in schools as well would really help, sort of push the careers forward within the early years sector as well. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think that when it comes to how we're supporting in nursery environments, it's not just what we're doing in the nursery, it's actually how we're helping in the community and how we're helping our families. And that gives us a wonderful opportunity to be very supportive, but actually has obligations to actually enable good, effective support to happen. And that comes from training, it comes from development, it comes from us all sharing our wisdom with each other, which links in with those things about induction and other elements of bringing someone in. But for us, we very much have reflected on how we make a difference in our community by what we actually provide. So we've been considering things like sustainability in the early years. How do we support our children to have a better understanding of how we can live in balance with our environment? And we've been working with the NCFE to put together a program that we can share with regard to how can we bring sustainability into early years environments in a meaningful way that enables children to have good learning experience that's wrapped around environmentalism. But we're also very mindful of how much parental support we can give and how much we're able to signpost. We've had over 10 years of austerity and pandemic, and lots of things that have impacted the way funding has drawn down everywhere. But early years has always had smaller amounts of funding given to them in in the grander scheme of things in compared to other sectors. So we very much a kind of a community of early years providers who work together to make do and make best with what we have. But what we do a great deal of is connect with each other. And I think that's one of the important things, is seeing those connections that we make. Because a good early years teacher, practitioner, if they work from one setting to another setting, if they're good, we want them to go off and work in lots of nurseries that be wonderful with the children. So I think CPD comes around that person and what they need and how we nurture them. And in some cases that can be a very unique experience, but I think broadly speaking, there are other key things we need to connect with. And I absolutely agree with Jill with regards to SEND provision and how we're supporting our children in our nurseries that are on the spectrum of having special education needs and disabilities.
Absolutely. If I can just come in there, Gavin, I'm just thinking about what you've both said in terms of, the wonderful things that the early years educators do, that those practitioners do within their early years settings. And I think they're ambassadors, aren't they? They are really representing, they're almost family support workers in lots of ways. They're industry champions. And these are all things that that in NCFE we're looking at and we are nurturing in terms of those roles. And we've got the SENCO, we've got the new SEND DFE criteria, and we're revising our qualifications in terms of that and being as accurate and as relevant as it can be. But yeah, and PANCO as well. So many things that are happening there to actually value that individual. And as you just said, Gary, to actually reflect what that individual needs and to be able to value them, appreciate what they do, and keep that professional journey going for them, because these people are professionals and it's the backbone of our society. What happens in early years stays. It's with you forever. And you're absolutely right. Put a group of early years professionals together and things happen. Absolutely right. You touched on sustainability, so shall I? Nice sort of seamless move over into sustainability. Thank you. And I was going to say, this is something that's on everybody's mind. Obviously, it's become higher on a political agenda. It's higher on a moral agenda. Lots of things going on around sustainability. We just developed a resource on sustainability in the early years as well. So, everybody is trying to do their bit, shall we say, to raise an awareness and to keep that sort of momentum and education going. Do you think it's going to be an increasingly important factor for early years moving forward? And I think, we see maybe young people could feel a little bit anxious about this, and because what do we do? What can we do about it? We're feeling out of control, and actually there are small things that can be done, aren't there? And small things that can make a big difference and relieve some of that. And I think that can start in the early years. So I don't know what you both think. Gary, it might be good to come to you first, because you mentioned sustainability. You brought it onto our agenda.
Yes, it's very much been in our mind for a while now. How do we help our children connect with our environment and the impact that we're having on our environment in a way that's meaningful, but also gives learning opportunities? Because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to take all of those wonderful things about learning about nature, how we take care of the planet, and contextualizing them in early years to make sure that they're age stage appropriate, but are great learning opportunities for our children. So we've been very, very mindful of the different ways we can implement this in nursery environments. But one of the reflections that we've had over quite some time, putting in a few activities and themes and lots of kind of ideas around sustainability is the impact it's having on our children. And the only way I can think of describing this is as a social influencer. Our children are experiencing and learning about the environment and sustainability, and they are sharing that with their parents. We call it pester power. We need to turn the lights off. We need to turn off the taps. So if we teach our children then share that and then encourage others to do it. So it's a great catalyst actually for community change. It's actually starting with our youngest children.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it? What do you think, Jill?
I absolutely agree. I mean, our children are our decision makers of the future, aren't they? So we can start at a very early age. They're natural connectors with nature. So, you know, they love being outdoors. And if we can start, you know, from that early age, embedding that, you know, whole approach to sustainability, it can only be a good thing. And as Gary said, then they will influence upwards then type of thing. So, yeah, so it's, I mean, we've adopted similar, a new school, which is a Danish approach, outdoor classroom approach to all, and, you know, find your tribe type of thing. So, but yeah, we're out there, we're doing it, and yeah, really, really important piece of work to be done. Absolutely.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah, you meant, yeah, I've got kids. Pest power is a massive thing, and like, you know, but I think also you can also unlock things for mental health and well-being in sustainability as well. Having a joy in nature, having a joy in making impactful small change. You know, soil, one of the biggest sort of carbon dumps we can have, but that's all involved with growing, you know, and sort of what can you do with seed to move on. And I just think it's wonderful, you know, that it's starting off and we can just see this going into the future. I need to talk fast now because we're nearly out of time and I've got loads of things I want to ask you. The next thing I wanted to sort of touch on really was recruitment and transferable skills. Is there any transferable skills that you guys can see to better help with skills gaps? Going through the great reshuffle, the great resignation, call it what you will, we've got a bit of a skills crisis going on. Like, what sort of transferable skills do you see are natural fits, or maybe outside of the box fits, that can then help people with progression to be able to move on with their career in early years, childcare, education, to better progress their route? Jill, what do you see?
I mean, so yeah, as I said before, people are really rethinking their careers at the moment and really valuing the sector. So really, I mean, you've got to have a genuine desire to work with very young children. I mean, that's paramount. Flexible ability, you know, it's going to be a very busy, noisy environment. So not to be fazed by that type of thing. But, you know, just good communication skills, flexibility, you know, all those sorts of, you know, and to be resilient, definitely, and to be able to use your own initiative. Those are these transferable skills right away, I think. And a lot of people have those skills through previous, you know, roles and careers. So, yeah, they can be adapted and we can, you know, and get those into the sector. Absolutely.
Gary, what do you see?
Yeah, it's, to put it bluntly, if you're working with young children, if you're working in care, it's your attitude and your desire to want to be a caring person that's the most important thing, because the skills, we can help you with that along the way. That's the CPD, that's the training, that's the qualifications that we can support you with. So if you've got that lovely behaviours of wanting to be a nurturing person and support our youngest children, the skills that you need along the way, you'll get those from training, you'll get them from your colleagues, all of that will happen. So that element of emotional intelligence, empathy, we're working with our youngest children. So all of those kind of nurturing qualities are absolutely what we'd love to see continuing to come into our workforce, that we can continue to grow and develop. But yes, it's an interpersonal relationship you have if you work in nursery environments with parents, with families, with children. So it's those interpersonal skills that are really the most transferable ones that we'd like to see still continuing to come into the sector.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you really touched on it well there about, you know, emotional intelligence and a way that you can support young, because, you know, this is the first time I'm probably interacting with, you know, other young people, with other families, or with other sort of caring sort of situations, and to be able to then help that individual, but also help the collective of the group. I just think it's really, really, really important. It's such a key area. We're nearly out of time, but I want to ask you one more thing. If you could dream and dream big, what would you want to see for the future of work in early years and childcare? Janet, what would you want to see?
Oh, okay. If I had a magic wand, I would like to see greater equity in relation to the terms and conditions that early years educators work in. And I'd like to see that that the passion was sustained. So if I was looking into the future, I'd want to see gender equality. I would like to see sustainability in action. I'm not being very quick. And I would like to see those terms and conditions in place with equity as well, and that babies and children are being cared for by people who want to be there and who have got those skills, the empathy, etc., that babies and young children deserve, so that they can apply the theory and knowledge in a purposeful, sincere way, and the impact is the biggest it can possibly be.
Yeah, no, cool. Gary, what do you want to see?
For me, if I was thinking two angles, from regards to our families coming in, I'd like to see more funding given to our parents and our families to enable them to access early years. Early years can be an expensive thing. And therefore, if we give more parents the opportunity to access childcare in an easy way for them to be able to access, and an easy way for a provider to be able to gain access to that funding, that would be amazing. But reinforcing what Janet said, it's that whole idea of kind of nurturing and continuing, so that if you join the early years workforce, you're nurtured to continue to stay in the early years workforce, so that you can see those lovely opportunities to grow and develop your career in so many ways. And there are so many opportunities in the early years sector for people to take. I wonder sometimes if people see that a couple of kind of opportunities, but don't actually realise how broad that is.
Yeah. Jill, what would you want to see?
Okay, what those two said, and just to answer that briefly, obviously funding, obviously your parity of esteem of the sector, and what I'd like to see is a national academy for early years, to give a bona fide voice, a good strong voice for the sector, so we can actually see some real change.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I just want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. Thank you, Janet, for being a great co-host. Gary and Jill, thank you so much. I won't. I could have avoided that question. I won't. What I would want if I was to dream big, as a parent, you're handing over your most valuable, precious thing that you own. Do you know what I mean? To someone or to an organisation to look after it. And I think we need to be able to realise that. So if someone's coming into the sector, that they realise and know that you are looking after treasure. Do you know what I mean? And that you are treasured as well. Do you know what I mean? And that you have got this career progression route to be looking after these treasured, amazing things that make impactful change for the future. I'm getting a little bit emotional now, but I just think it's an amazing sector, and I think you're just doing such fundamental change where you've got like a blank canvas. How can you help people be able to move forward? And I think, how can we value that? How can we help people be able to progress in their career with looking after young people and supporting their families? Really, time to say thanks. This total collaboration with NCFE and FE News. So Sam is looking after production side on NCFE, doing a brilliant job. Sam, thank you. Lindsay as well, thank you so much. Team FE News, Leah's in the background there, with asymptomatic with COVID, fighting through it, going for it, and sort of still working through. So Leah, thank you so much for making all the magic happen. Finley and Kelly, thank you for all the work you're doing in the background as well. See you next week, Thursday, 10 o'clock. We're going to be on location next week. We're going to be looking at sustainability, so extending what we were talking about there with my co-host, David Jones, and we will see you really soon, 10 o'clock next Thursday. Thank you for joining us. Bye.